And welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. And in this one I will quickly want to show you about what is state and how can you use state in React. So let's start off with what is state. And state is let's actually learn by example. Here is the famous Udemy website, and you already know by now, if you have watched the previous videos, that we make components in React. And let's say this navbar here is one component. Here you have another component. This image is maybe another component in itself, and every component in React needs to have some data associated with it, so it can render properly. So some of it is static, but some of it gets from a server. For example, this Udemy for Business, Teacher, Udemy, of course, categories, etc., are all static. They're just plain hard-coded text. But whether the user is based on the data, if the user is logged in or not, we show two buttons. If the user is not logged in, so he can log in. And if he is logged in, as you can see here, if I'm logged in, it shows different. The navbar renders differently, so it has this button over here, etc. So every component, not every, but a lot of components need states, need some properties, so they can render. And here's where state comes in. So state state is something that every component has or can have, and it's where you put all the properties, the data that belongs to that component. And the important thing is, whenever this data changes, maybe you're fetching some in the background from the server something, and whenever this data updates, maybe you've deleted some item or etc., or you can just if you can change this data by reaction to some user event. Like if you click on this login, data will change. I will log in, and the component will render itself. So whenever the state changes, the data changes, it updates. This data is reactive, so the component will re-render, and hence it may show, it may look different after the render. It may render something different. So let's just dive right in, and first of all, I'll run this app by doing npm start, and I showed you where this command comes from. And this is the code from the previous lesson, which I will delete. No, delete this button. Oops. So this is the app. I'll go here, I'll delete this, and what I want to do is now show you one example of why we need state, why we need to use state. So let's say I'll give you a quick example. Let's say we have a name and we want to change this name. Name just rendered to the screen, and we want to change this name by on click, if we click a button. So let's say we have here a name property, and we'll say codenerd. And whenever you click on some button, and this is the button you would click on, so you'll say button, and we'll add a on click, and here I'll pass in a function, and here in the function we can say something like name equal to let's say John. So now when we have a name, and by the way, I should render this name. I'll render it in a paragraph. So I'll do a paragraph, and I'll put the name inside. And how do you render name in React? We already learned that this is a dynamic variable. So we'll do these curly brackets and then put in the name in here. So I'll save this. If I go to my website now, I'll see my name being rendered, the button without text, and here we'll say just change name. Save this. So now I have this and change name. So whenever you click this, the name will change. And you can see that if I do a console log and just print out the name, you'll see that after this the name has changed. So I'll also pull up the Chrome DevTools just so you can see what's being printed out. So now if I click on this change name, whoops, oh, this is a constant, so I should say something like let instead of const, but that's a good practice still. So now I have a name. If I click on change name, you'll see the name changed to John, of course, because we set it to John. But here, the name being rendered to the screen did not change. That's because when we first rendered the screen, it just rendered code nerd because that was the initial value. And then when we changed to John, this component did not render again, so it doesn't have the updated information. And that's when state comes in. If you had this variable being reactive, being a state of the component, the React will listen to this whenever this value changes and will re-render the component. So, and it will have the updated value. So let's see now how you can use this state. So by now you saw what's the problem, why you need state, and now I didn't actually mention, but you need to use what's called hooks in React to tap into the state or create state for any component. And to use hooks, and by the way, this is very easy, you just need to import that hooks, and there are hooks for all kinds of stuff. If you want to use the hook for state, this hook is called UseState, and I'm going to import this by doing these curly brackets, and inside of them I'll say use state, and every hook, by the way, begins with use something else. This time it's use state, and I'll import it from React. And now to create the state, or the initial state I should say, what you can do is of course call, this is by the way just a function, so we will call this function like so. We'll say, oops, sorry for getting interrupted there, but as I was saying, you need to call this use state so you can use it. So we'll invoke the function like so, and this function takes in one parameter, which is just the initial state we want. So we just wanted to store this string, so we'll pass in this code nerd string like so. But for now we're not saving this state anywhere. We're just calling a function that creates us a state, and we need to save it somewhere. So I'll do const, and then I'll do this technique called array destructuring, where I take in some of the stuff this UseState function returns us, and it returns us two things. The first thing is the property, or the actual state, the data, and the second is a function that can update this first property, which is the actual state. So usually, let's say you call the state name, the first thing that returns, and the second is a function, and we'll call the function set, and then usually you would just add in what you called the state, or the first property, which is name in our example. This is the best practice. This is how pretty much everyone does it. And now we on click, we need to, now we have this name property here that we get from the UseState, and I'll delete this and delete all this. And now whenever you click on this button, this function is called, of course, as previously. And now here we want to update the state. And since we updated the state, this component will re-render, and if this name has changed, it will show the different name. So remember how I said we use this setName function, or the second thing we get returned from this function, UseState, to change or update this state. So now we'll use this, we'll call this setName, not setState. And here we can pass the new value we want to update the state to. So we'll say something like, let's say John again. Now if I save this, and if I go inside my app, so I saved everything. If we go to the page now and click on change name, you'll see the name changed to John. So that's it's a very simple change, but it shows how state works. So basically, if I go to the code, when I clicked on this button, this function got called, the setName function got invoked, and it changed the state from Codner, the initial state, to John. And since React listens to this change, this state, it's reactive, the component re-rendered itself, and then it showed the new name, which is John and not Codner. And you can now see how you can change this and make it even more. You can, for example, put an age here, and here if you have an age property, and let me actually show you this. And if you, or maybe this is not the age, maybe this is something else, and if the initial state is 1, you can change this. Whenever you click this button, let's say you want to increment it by 1, and here you just pass the age, the current age we have in a property, and we can access it like this because we have already an age. And if you add 1 to it, and every time you basically click on this button, you add 1 to it, and here we just output the age. So we have 1. If we click here, the state will update, the component will re-render, and you'll get the 2, etc.